Weather and life both change quickly. Do you have a farm estate plan? You need to learn the best option to help your family avoid or minimize federal estate taxes and other costs.
I'm Brad Swenson, President of Swenson Investments and Commodities. We work confidentially with farmers, ranchers, and advisors to help develop the best farm estate plan.
During our Farm Basics time today, we're going to talk a little about soil temperature. Well, as it gets a little later in the season, no farmer worries too much about soil temperature, but I'll tell you what, the farther north you are, we farm in South Dakota, and I can only imagine the farmers in North Dakota, they're paying a little bit of attention to that soil temp because there are different crops that will germinate and grow at different temperatures.
I think it's interesting as farmers, we get to have lots of different tools, and one of the tools that I like in the early spring is just your small little soil probe for temperature. And I like to take a look.
It looks like a meat probe there, Darren. Are you sure you got the
well,
right soil one?
It kind of looks the same thing. But the important thing is just to tell what that temperature is down where you're going to be putting that seed. So like with corn, for example, we try to seed that at about 2 inches. You could go as deep as 2.5. But basically right in that 2-inch range, you want to see what the soil temperature is just to have an idea of how long it's going to take for that seed to get out of the ground, how long it's going to have to lay there, what you're going to need for insect control, those kind of things. So farmers have a lot of choices as they're seeding. Not only can they choose which day they're going to put stuff in the ground, they also can choose how they're going to protect that seed until it emerges.
But here's the whole thing. When we talk to farmers every year about soil temperature in the spring, we will always say, it's nice to know what the soil temp is, but I'll tell you what, if you get a hot, sunny, windy day, that soil temp could go up literally 5 to 10 degrees in a day. Okay, so soil temperature is not everything. The old rule was, you don't want to put your corn in the ground till the soil temp is 50 degrees. My rule is, let's take a look at what the calendar says. In other words, there are some years that at the end of March where we farm, we could have a soil temp of 50 degrees, and other years it could be the 1st of May and we still don't have a 50-degree soil temp. But I'll tell you what, I'm not going to be planting my corn in March. I'm certainly planting my corn the 1st of May, even if my soil temp is low. We always try to look at the calendar rather than the soil temp because we know that the soil temp can vary really quickly.
Well, the other thing that I look at is how big a farmer are you, or how big a garden are you going to plant? If you can get everything planted in one day, by all means wait. There's no point being out there very early just to prove to your neighbor that you can get it done quicker than he can.
What? I thought that was all the fun of it.
But if you're a monstrously large farmer, you know what? You have to take some chances. You have to plant a little bit on the early side, at least a portion of your acres, just to be able to get it all in the ground by the ideal dates. So you have to use all these things with a grain of salt.
Now, we look at soil temperature in the spring for when we're seeding crops. We also look at soil temperature in the fall in the northern part of the country because once the soil temp drops to a certain point, then we don't have to worry as much about nutrient loss.
Well, when it comes to fertilizer application, we're very concerned about fertilizer being lost in the fall. And mainly that's due to bacterial conversion of that fertilizer into a form that could potentially leach.
Especially with nitrogen.
So we want that temperature to be relatively cool. That way we know the bacterial activity in the soil is going to be slowed down. Now, bacterial activity in the soil will not stop until 32 degrees, but of course 32 degrees is freezing, and if the soil is a frozen block of ice, you can't really apply fertilizer. So there has to be kind of a give and take there where it gets down to 40 degrees or less. Now you know things are really slowed down in the soil, yet it's still pliable enough that you can move that soil around and work that fertilizer.
Well, 50 degrees is often the soil temp we're looking at when we're applying fall fertilizer, but to Darren's point, if it's below 40, then we have almost no risk of loss out there. And ideally, eventually, we'd like it to totally freeze up. Then we know nutrients aren't going anywhere.
Well, there's certainly a lot of reasons that farmers pay attention to soil temperature, but farmers are also looking for other things in their fields like weeds. Can you identify this week's Weed of the Week?